Okay, so today I'm in West Devon, deepest, darkest West Devon, with Ian Richards. Thanks for agreeing to talk to us today, Ian.
Thanks for coming, Simon.
You are a professional punter and tipster. So which is first and foremost at the moment?
I would say professional punter I would like to be. Tipster is probably just out of necessity, mainly because what I specialise in, what I can bet on, I can't always get what I want on. So instead of giving up that edge, I sell the tips to make ends meet.
Okay, so your main medium of choice at the moment is French racing. Is that right?
Yeah, French jumps racing. Never touched the flat.
Okay, so what drew you to that, and why? And you can tell us also why you don't touch the flat as well.
I've never liked flat racing. I grew up sort of with jumps racing in the blood. And that's what I've always followed. Never followed flat racing. Growing up down in the West Country, my only local tracks were Newton Abbot and Devon and Exeter. And I used to work on the car parks as a kid, so that's what drew me to it originally. French race, I've always bet on national hunt racing all the way, well, ever since I was a kid basically. But only French national hunt racing got drawn to during lockdown because I was bored, had not a lot to bet on. The UK and Irish racing scene was cancelled, and the French went back about a month earlier, I think, than we did. So I started to have a little look at it. Whether it was a good thing, but the first two bets I had on French jumps racing, they both won, and I was kind of hooked in.
Did you sort of dive straight in betting wise, or did you sort of give it a bit of a research?
Pretty
first?
much dive straight in. There weren't huge bets, so it was just have a go, see how it gets on, and as soon as you think, oh, this is interesting, and found it was very, very different to UK and Irish background racing.
So do you bet into the Tote parimutuel or
No,
the bookmakers?
I bet on with the bookmakers in this country. When lockdown first happened, they were all actually pricing up all the French racing the night before, but they don't do that anymore. Only Bet365 do, and they give a guide, and then most other bookmakers join in about 8, 9 o'clock the following morning.
How many days a week do they jump race over there?
Varies. During the main part of the season, you might have 4 or 5 meetings a week that are actually covered, because the British bookmakers only cover the meetings that are covered by the PMU. There are lots of other small race meetings, but you can't bet on them with this country. If the PMU don't offer it, then the UK bookmakers don't offer it. But then during July and August, it goes a bit quieter when obviously the weather's a lot hotter. They might only race 2 or 3 days a week, and then they might only have 2 jumps races on a card.
Okay, so you must, to be successful at it, you must have found some sort of angle and edge fairly quickly.
Yeah, I just discovered that if you start watching it, you realise how different every single course is. And the whole setup is very, very different. I won't touch the novice hurdlers and novice chasers because I don't know anything about them. I'm not going to pretend to. I don't know anything about the breeding, etc. I do it when all the form is more or less exposed. So it's all the handicap races, the conditions races, the group races. Found out very quickly that claiming races weren't for me. I think I tipped up in about 50 odd races and had one winner. Claiming races are very different with the French trainers. They use them as warm-up races, or sometimes horses are injured and they chuck them in there just to see if they'll get it claimed and get rid of it. So you find out quite quickly what you can and can't do. But mainly it was because, like I said, a lot of the courses are so different. A lot of the English courses are similar in nature, but if you compare, say, I know Cannes in the winter to Auteuil at this time of the year, then different horses for different courses, basically.
So that is the sort of accentuated version of that.
I think so, yeah, personally.
And so what sort of tools do you use? Is it just what you see, or is the form available, and do you need to be good at French?
I found out that my French from when I was 16 suddenly started coming back a little bit, but I can't necessarily speak it, but I can read it, I can sort of understand it if I'm listening to it. But it's mainly using the French Gallop site. All the replays are there, all the form is there, ever so easy to access, all free. So I just basically look at the form, look at the races, and do it that way.
So there's no sort of equivalent of race form or
not really
race form interactive.
I mean, out the races have their own sort of, they do the cars. Racing Post doesn't bother unless it's a big group race. ATR do it because obviously they show it on TV, a lot of the races. but they're only covering it. They miss out bits of form, which is fine for me because I can find it elsewhere. And they give the little blurb that whoever writes them, I'm not sure what company does it, but there's a little bit of a blurb for each horse, but I don't tend to read those very much. I tend to rather just look at the form, look at the races, look at the coverage, and look at the replays, basically. It's a lot of replay watching.
And how much difference is there in the way races are run from the UK to France? And how much do you have to sort of put your mindset into French mode?
Yeah, it is different. Let's try and explain it. I think because the prize money is a lot greater. I mean, the prize money roughly, I would say, is at least 2 to 3 times what it is over here. You can't back or lay your own horse on Betfair. So it's a very different market. All you've got is a PMU in France. And you tend to find out what trainers target certain races, how some trainers are ready to run a horse first time, other ones will chuck it in a claimer, get it fit. And you can always tell watching the replays, whether a horse is fit or not, or whether it's ready to go. So it's just sort of trial and error it's been for me over 4 years, and plus listening and talking to other people who've been doing it a lot longer than I have. There's always been help out on Twitter from people I've met, which has been a great bonus, to be honest.
Okay, something that wasn't in the questions, I don't want to chuck you in, this is something that's come to me now. It's all about the PMU, but you don't use it.
No.
But
I use it as a guide.
Okay, so what I'm thinking is the same with any jurisdiction where there's just that. As we all know, apart from on Twitter, most people lose betting. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't there be an edge for a professional punter? Is the value not there because you're going to be one of the few people that get it right?
I don't think the value is there in the PMU. I think it's taking advantage of your own pricing. The PMU, I use it as a guide early in the day. I can make a judgment as to whether the price is going to shift a lot, either inwards or outwards. But early PMU prices are only a rough guide. A lot of the money comes in late. You'll see that suddenly horses are cut very much late on in the last 15 minutes. And that's when you see what price it's really going to go off at.
Right, so the shrewd money still moves it.
At the end, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So are you not in danger? Well, I imagine this question's a silly one. You are in danger of bookmakers' radar spotting you a lot quicker if you're just betting on the French jump racing.
Yep. I do bet on other things, but not a lot. I mainly concentrate on the French racing, but it's why I started the tipping side of it as well, because it's almost like I've got those people betting for me into a race. I know it sounds a bit weird, but that's the way I look at it.
So we'll talk about how what your terms are and all that stuff later on. But your tipping is at odds too. Is that how you do it?
No. I charge monthly fee.
Right. So the fee is part of your income rather than trying to win.
Basically, that's the way.
Okay. So how long have you been earning a living by your wits betting for a living then?
I gave up gainful employment in 2000, so 24 years.
So nearly a quarter of a century.
But it's changed a lot what I've done over the time.
Yeah, and I'm interested in that because, obviously I am because we were doing the interview, but you've been involved in some very varied markets in the past. So if we just go through a few of them, betting on marathons.
Yeah, my background was athletics when I was a kid, so I always used to run. I always find marathons, it's probably to do with I always used to bet on long distance horse races, so Grand National, things like that. So the equivalent I rather like was with the marathons. It's a very different thing. It's a bit like the betting on the golf as well, which I've done. It's you against yourself almost, and a marathon is very much like that. But betting on marathons is quite unusual and it's quite rare because they don't offer odds very often. You got your London Marathon every year, obviously. Few of them offer odds on New York, Boston, the major marathon, world marathon majors. And also then you get your Olympics and your World Championships. But apart from that, it's probably a few times a year you can have a go at it.
But how'd you get an edge on them? Because the form must be a lot ambiguous than it is in horse racing. They're running on the going and the distance.
Again, you look at it's the weather. So most marathons are run in the spring, the autumn. The Olympics and the World Championships that are run in the summer are very different because they're run in hot conditions. So therefore you look at marathon runners who've run well in I don't know, India or Dubai or something like that, where the weather's a lot different. There are various sort of things, and also a lot of courses are hilly, some are flat. They do vary a lot, so it is.
So I mean, there's that, you know, you've been betting for a living for 25 years, so you keep finding these angles, as we're going to find out on
Yep.
various different sports. So if you think you've spotted something in like a marathon, I'm assuming that you can't go on and have a monkey with Bet365.
Not anymore.
So I mean, you know, is
I
it
did have one.
logistical nightmare to try and get a decent bet?
Yeah, it is now. I mean, years ago it was all right. I mean, my favourite one was, I think it was 2007 World Championships. There's a lady called Catherine Enderhaber who'd run in her first marathon, finished fifth. You often find they don't run very well in the first one. And I think she won something like 14 out of her next 16 marathons or something crazy. She'd been to Osaka the year before, run the course and won. And the bookmakers opened her up at 9-1. And I'm thinking she should be about even money favourite. But then you have to sit on your hands and wait for all the others to price up, and then you go in. So, and at that time, Twitter didn't exist. It was Betfair Forum, it must have been. I mean, I got a fair chunk on to win about £3,000 or £4,000, I think it was in the end, which was a lot on a marathon. You couldn't do that these days. But I had quite a few hundred people that also went in, and we did quite well, I think.
Did the exchanges price up things like that?
Not very often. You have to ask, and they're very reticent about doing it. So,
Okay, and another one I spotted here. This is one that comes up once every 4 years at best. Obama at 50-1 to be the next president.
no, that was 2 years before he was even nominated, I think it was. And I don't think, somebody else put me onto it, and they said, this guy, you know, have a watch. I started reading his stuff and thinking, well, yeah. But the whole thing was, I mean, no, to put it politically, no person of colour had ever become president or even run, I think. But it just seemed wrong for what he was or who he was. So I think that didn't help with closure of my Paddy Power account, let's put it that way.
And so you don't leave a stone unturned. Daniel Craig to be the next James Bond.
That was another one. Again, it's a stupid thing. It's finding little things that people think, well, nobody's ever done that. So Daniel Craig, the reason they said he wouldn't be a next James Bond because he was blonde, and there'd never been a blonde James Bond. Doesn't make any sense. If he was a good actor for the role, then why not?
Now, it's interesting because I met somebody years ago that said that him and his mates used to share tapes of songs in Eurovision Song Contest, and then have it spark off after they passed them around hundreds of people to find out what they like. Is there like a secret underground network of you guys that say, hang on, you might want to look at this Daniel Craig market?
There sort of used to be, but not anymore, because you just really can't get on. If I went to have a little bet on a small market these days, I couldn't do it. Eurovision's a good one, because I used to make good money on Eurovision as well, but everybody cottoned on in the end that it's all to do with political voting, etc. But back in the, I don't know, 20 years ago, it was easy to make money on Eurovision, yeah.
The last one, I had a colleague years ago that said she had it spark off on this one, Zara Phillips, to win Sports Personality of the Year.
That was again finding something that her mother had won it. It was a weak year. We didn't have anything really sporting had happened. And I think Darren Clark was odds-on favourite because he'd helped Europe win the Ryder Cup, and his wife had passed away, and very sad. But that wasn't a sporting thing, and he was embarrassed that he was even nominated for it. And I think Zara Phillips, a month before, had won the World Championships, much like her mother. And I thought, well, there's a certain type of person who votes for things and things like that. And I think even on the morning, she was still 50-1. And I'd backed her at 66, 50s, 40s. And even when the voting closed, I think she was only 10-1 still, but won it quite easily.